Woman, won't you find your voice? Oh, woman, won't you find your soul? Woman, won't you find your voice? Oh, woman, won't you find your soul?
I started calling myself a feminist at 15 because I discovered the word feminist when I was 15. But I really feel like I've always been a feminist. I was my parents and their siblings, a very strange family, I suppose. Now I realize retrospectively, always treated us like everything we had to think about the world mattered, right? So our opinions were valued. We were very affirmed children, maybe a little over affirmed sometimes. And so going to school, I started school in 1978. It's apartheid South Africa and so on. And there were teachers, I remember distinctly, teachers who would say, male teachers, who would say, boys are smarter than girls. And I suppose if you were raised in a conventionally patriarchal home, this would just be one of those things. But I remember it jarring quite significantly for me because it didn't make sense. I was out of step. But also because, of course, the just looking at who came first place and second place in class directly contradicted this idea that boys were smarter than girls. And so I remember then having this very clear sense of an injustice against girls, which I still had at 15. But at 15, I suppose it wasn't just about boys being teachers who said boys were smarter than girls. It was several other things about what girls can't do. I was also a very physical. I mean, I was short and knock-kneed and clumsy and plump, but in my head, I imagined myself quite agile. So I was always falling out of things and always climbing into things. And I also remember very distinctly kind of the being told constantly, stop climbing, girls. Don't stop climbing things. Don't sit like that. Girls don't sit like that. Don't do this, don't do that. You're acting like a boy. And so I suppose by the time I got to 15, I'd had a lifetime of being told, not lifetime, but 15 years, I suppose, of being told that things that I really liked, that felt comfortable, that felt free, that felt weird and fun, were wrong. And I just wasn't really cut out to just give in to it. So I remember kind of feeling angered by being told boys are smarter than girls. And I remember feeling incredibly angry being told that I couldn't climb into things. So I continued to. And so when I was 15, I discovered the word feminist and feminism. I thought, oh my God, what? There are hundreds and thousands and millions of other people who feel like me, who are also angered by this. Oh, absolutely, yes. And so, yeah, that's a very long answer, but there. African feminism means a movement, a way of thinking, a way of being that is feminist and so opposed to patriarchy and to the dismantling of patriarchy, but that has at its center freeing African women and all others. African women, it is a movement that is centered on the lives of African women of all ages and locations and classes and sexual orientation. For me, African feminism also has to always be anti-homophobic and queer specifically, so not just, it has to be historical, and it is also a specific strand of feminism for me that sees difference as a strength rather than as divisive and as a weakness. I often teach girls who kind of come to feminism through reading other feminists. I think they've changed ideas about what is possible. I think at all levels. I mean, if you're looking at, they've given many of us a language to live in our own skins comfortably. They've given us the courage to fight feminist battles, whether we recognized all the time that there were feminist battles, that we wouldn't have, that we may have given up on. I live in a country that feminist strategic activism I live in a country where kind of strategic feminist activism has made the impossible possible, right? So, I grew up at a time where up in South Africa, so kind of control over your body and control over movement and so on. And so part of what feminists have done in South Africa is, the constitution we have would not be possible without kind of very strategic feminists. And part of what that does for me is that obviously it's not a country that has a majority feminist populace. But part of what it does is it underscores the ability of feminist strategy, feminist thinking, feminist mobilizing to put in place structures and institutions. So the constitution, the legislation on reproductive and sexual choice that we constantly have to defend, but nonetheless is there. Ideas about who has power, right? And certainly very often in kind of very practical ways, in interview committees, some of the legislation that those very strategic, small number, but still very strategic, clearly feminists have been put in place, and just makes life easier at a practical level in the workplace so many times. So for example, there's certain battles that are much easier to win in staffing panels, in admissions policies, in funding decisions that you wouldn't be possible. I live in a country with this fantastic proto-feminist legislation that nonetheless has deepening misogyny, where that terrain needs to be defended constantly with a virulent backlash. But nonetheless, I think it's important to recognize that work and to recognize that we're not starting from scratch. I remember kind of reading and having access to material that the once and again now incredibly powerful Zimbabwean feminist movement had. I remember talk of them. I remember reading things that are out of print that sometimes my students don't even know ever existed today. The work of African feminists has been incredibly enabling to me. It's been incredibly enabling both in terms of how I feel in my own body, how I relate to other women, how I teach, what I'm able to affirm and recognize and enable in my students, what I teach, how I fight what I fight, who I choose to love, not to love, to be in alliance with, it's really made my life on the daily, breath to breath, walking around in the world, very easy. But well, much easier. It's made it possible for me to live with myself. The way forward is more, and we're starting to see some of that. More connection, better connection, better ways of working transnationally and in connection with each other, amplifying those. I think the big challenge, but which is a challenge I'm kind of excited about, I think we're going to deal with it quite creatively, is funding our own movements. I think that, I think it's a very vibrant time full of kind of enormous challenges and brutalities and but I think there's so many similarities, and I love that we live in a digital age, and we're able to make connections and discover each other in ways that are, and meet in person sometimes. I think that one of the challenges, I think that one of the challenges on this continent is this kind of insane kind of religious fundamentalisms, and I think that the main way we're gonna free this continent of all of those fundamentalisms, whether you're talking about Islamic fundamentalisms, or you're talking about Christian right-wing fundamentalisms that are enormously well-resourced, or you're talking about the insane African traditional patriarchal leadership that parades as kind of spiritual, culturalist, all of those fundamentalisms. I honestly think that the only way we're going to free ourselves from those is through African feminism. I think that, and linked to that, of course, and one of the things that they have in common, being kind of violently patriarchal, is this kind of rabid homophobia, right? And a rabid heteropatriarchal stuff. I think African feminism is really the only way we're going to free ourselves from that. But the African feminism has to be kind of attentive to many of the challenges. I love being in a movement where that when we have to be called on, we have to call each other on our shit, and where we can, and people really sit with and take it on, right? And not feel that and so I love being part of a movement that does that. Part of kind of working with those strengths is the difficulty of terms of disagreement that don't always feel feminist. Do you know what I mean? So for me it's important, I don't need for African feminist belonging and community to only be about the easy. I welcome the discomfort, and even if sometimes I just want to be like, I don't want to be in this room, I don't like these people right now, I just need 10 minutes, and I think that's okay, even if it's difficult sometimes. So Flora and Nwapa, who wrote the first novel who wrote the first African feminist novel, a novel that I think as African feminist literary scholars we just go crazy with that book. Wambuya Dineo, who is my Lord, that poor woman's spirit. I'm sure she's just like, oh my God, Pumla, like every day you are speaking about me. I love her. I loved her when she was alive. Love her now. Someone who's alive, Miriam Tladi, very own. Can't you try and write a kind of literary biography of her? I've met her a few times, and she's, where are the books about me by you African feminist literary people? Where are they? So I'm hoping I can say, here's one. Emma Mashinini, who was a trade unionist and trade unionist leader, feminist, unapologetically feminist, South African. Lots of people. Mariama Ba, whom I love and teach and have taught forever. Audre Lorde, of course, always. Barbara Christian, Barbara Smith were very important to kind of my thinking about ways of being in the world, thinking about myself kind of and my own writing, thinking about myself and my own untidy desire, sexual orientation, mutating senses of kind of femininity. Alice Walker, whom I love with all my heart, first book written by a Black woman that I ever read, even though I read in, and I did then. I'd read books by Black men in Xhosa and isiZulu, in English, in Afrikaans. I'd never read an entire book by a Black woman. Tenjiwe Mtintso, who was one of the women who was one of the founders of the Black consciousness movement in South Africa. So very early SASO activist, later became a guerrilla in Mkondo Wesizwe, still radical feminist, very uncomfortable to given the positions that she continues to take within her movement, and I suppose feeling like her life's work is undone by the very movement that she gave her life to. Yes. Okay, I've talked mainly, yes. So those are my sheroes alive and some of my feminist ancestors.
And oh, woman, find your soul. And don't let them tell you that this isn't yours. 'Cause you are yours, your voice, your power, your soul. Baby, don't let them tell you that this isn't yours. 'Cause you are yours, your voice, your power, your soul. Your voice, your power, your soul. Your soul, your voice, your power, your soul. Oh, oh, woman, won't you find your voice? Said woman, won't you find your soul? This is yours, oh baby, you are yours. Your voice, your power, your soul. Your voice, your power, your soul.